the final speaker for this part of the event, let me introduce a 21-year-old son of a Jamaican immigrant, co-founder of Civil Right Media and Conservative Comeback Ireland. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Scallan.
All right, I'm here to cause trouble, so I'm just going to get that out of the way now. Can everybody hear me? We can all hear me okay? Okay, perfect. I thought it was quite funny that at the end of my last speech in Dublin in September, I briefly called out Angela Merkel at the end, and shortly after she announced her resignation. So I could be humble and put that down to coincidence, but I'm going to take credit for that right here. So if you have any politicians whose careers you'd like me to end, be sure to just send me an email or something and I'll see what I can do. Oh yeah, sorted. I'm on it. So with that being said, I'd like to thank you all for coming out here today. I'd also like to thank Herman, my fellow speakers, and the organisers for putting together this great event. And lastly, I'd like to thank Mr. Declan Ganley for agreeing to debate this issue, even though I don't agree with his stance on the EU. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Ganley. His speech at the Rally for Life a couple of years ago was one of the most inspiring things I've ever heard. I think I listened to that so many times that I almost accidentally memorised it. He's a big critic of Marxism and crony corporatism like myself, and he's a God-fearing man, so we have that in common too. So thank you, sir, for your service to Irish society over so many years. I think it's great that when we come to a point of disagreement, we can debate with reasonable people at an event like this, and I think it's a very healthy sign for our society. As for me, as Kate Lawler said, my name is Ben Scallan. Some of you may know me from the Facebook page Conservative Comeback Ireland, and also Civil Right Media, where we try to provide Irish people with a reasonable centre-right perspective on current affairs. So if you're sick of the mainstream media and their far-left stranglehold on information, you can check us out at facebook.com/civilrightmedia and also facebook.com/irishcomeback, because the truth is important and people have a right to hear it regardless of whose sensibilities it offends. And that actually is one of the biggest differences between us and the people who currently run the European Union. We believe that ordinary people are entitled to hear the truth and to be given the full story before they make up their mind on important issues. But too many people in the EU and in our own government don't agree with this idea, it seems. One of these people is the President of the EU Commission, Mr. Jean-Claude Juncker. The Daily Telegraph quotes him as saying, in reference to the Lisbon Treaty, "Of course there will be transfers of sovereignty, but would I be intelligent to draw the attention of the public to this fact?" Now, leaving aside the question of Mr. Juncker's intelligence, we're not even going to go there. Bear in mind that this is the same Lisbon Treaty that the Irish people voted against until we were undemocratically forced to vote again. And Juncker openly admits that there was a transfer of sovereignty from the member states to the European Union. So if that's not outrageous to you, I don't know what is, to be frank. But this is not the only time that Mr. Juncker has let something like that slip. I suppose that it's hard to keep a secret when you're tipsy all the time, but there you go. Actually, as a brief aside, I will say that I admire his ambition. It seems that he's decided to deal with Europe's wine lake all on his own, so you can't fault the man for trying. But in another off-guard moment, the unelected head of Europe said, "We decide on something, leave it lying around and wait to see what happens. If no one kicks up a fuss because most people don't understand what's been decided, we continue step by step until there is no turning back." These are all real quotes, by the way. These are from the Telegraph. I'll link the sources below when the video goes up online so that you can see it for yourself. But what we're seeing here is this man's idea of democracy. This is what informed consent looks like in the European Union. Regarding the referendum on the EU Constitution back in 2005, he said, "If it's yes, we say on we go. If it's a no, we say we continue." So, in other words, they will proceed whether the people of Europe want it or not. The referendum is all a farcical show to keep us placated so we feel like we have control over our countries, while the elites really just do whatever the hell they want and our vote is essentially meaningless. And we've heard that again recently, haven't we? What's it they're saying now regarding Brexit? That the UK needs to have a second referendum, a so-called people's referendum, as if the first one wasn't somehow. Very unusual that the side backed by billionaire elitists like George Soros is the side of the people, while the side that got the majority vote isn't. But there you go, that's the world we live in, I suppose. So then, returning to Mr. Juncker, the man with the 5-year plan, let's consider what we've just heard. So he admits openly that the EU is trying to deceive the people of Europe, and that there was a transfer of national sovereignty from the member states to Brussels, all while pretending that there wasn't. If the EU is so good for us, why all the lies? Because he knows that the people of Europe love their nations and don't want to be part of a European superstate. He knows that the people of Europe value their national sovereignty and don't want their countries to become mere vassals of the European empire that he's constructing. That is Mr. Juncker's true vision of Europe, and that is the Europe that we are moving towards as we speak. Now, I have to take one part of that back. I said that people in Europe value their national sovereignty, and that's, of course, a generalisation. It really depends who you're talking about. If you're talking about, say, Micheál Martin of the Fianna Fáil party, then maybe national sovereignty isn't so much of a priority. I'm sure we're all familiar with that infamous speech he gave where Micheál said that Ireland wanted nothing to do with a quote-unquote backward-looking idea of sovereignty, and that he remained absolutely committed to the ideals of the European Union. Well, actually, he said Ireland remained absolutely committed to the European Union. I put the question to you now. Does Micheál Martin speak for the people of this country? No. I didn't think so either. Here is a man who can't lead his own party, yet who presumes to lead the nation. A man whose shameful betrayal of the traditions of Fianna Fáil on the 8th Amendment alone make him morally unfit to hold any office in the state. I think somebody should inform Mick that we did away with kings quite some time ago in this country, and that he doesn't speak for the people of Ireland. We do. Irish sovereignty is gone when the people of Ireland say it's gone, and let me tell you, that will be a cold day in hell. It's not up to turncoat TDs, spineless Shanadors, or any Bolsheviks in Brussels. This is the very same crowd who have just signed away our neutrality with this new PESCO agreement right under our noses. So now, just earlier this week, we have both Merkel and Emmanuel Macron, the French soybean-in-chief, both calling for the creation of a true European army. Somebody should tell Mr. Macron that just because you're a French manless, that does not make you Napoleon Bonaparte. This is the same man who got caught spending 40 grand on makeup. That's actually true. You can look that up. He's also compared himself to Jupiter, the Roman king of the gods. But if you look at his abysmal approval ratings, you'll see that the only similarity between himself and Jupiter is that they're both gas giants. Yet, despite all of that, we are now eligible for this European army with him at the helm. So let's be clear about one thing. There are millions of Irish men and women who would happily rush to defend Ireland if it needed them, myself included. I've yet to meet anyone from any country who'd be willing to die for the European Union. This is Ireland. Our anthem is Aire na Bhíon, and our flag is the tricolour. We are Irish first and foremost. This is not a claim of superiority, as some of the media would like to paint it, but merely a proclamation of who we are. To quote an excerpt from a poem that my father wrote when I was very young, we do not claim a greater status, do not claim we are better men, only that by our own labours may the world be great again. Erin Gabra. You see, all of these recent developments are not a coincidence. In my last speech at the Dublin conference in September, I said that the passing of the EU's Article 13 would be the first step on the road to censorship, and that they would inevitably, in the long run, want to control our speech and the content that we consume. And at the time, some critics called me an alarmist and said that I was blowing things out of proportion, that this was a ridiculous notion that could never happen. Well, right on cue, just the other week, the so-called European Court of Human Rights decided to uphold a decision in Austria to convict a woman for criticising somebody's religion. So while the people of Ireland were going to the polls to decide whether or not we'd remove blasphemy from our own constitution, it turns out that the European courts had already made our mind up for us and replaced religious blasphemy with secular blasphemy. Every week, it seems, the EU further restricts our rights as individuals and as free nations. And that, ladies and gentlemen, leads us to where we are now. Is it any wonder why they hate us? When it comes to the EU, you can forget the freedom to prosper. They don't even want to give you the freedom to speak. The mask of the cultural Marxists has finally slipped. They've allowed their true agenda to come out, and it's not the virtuous agenda that they've been trying to sell us for so long. These European Unionists wouldn't know true virtue if it bit them. To steal a phrase from the eminent Oscar Wilde, they know the price of everything and the value of nothing. They believe in nothing. They create nothing. All they do is take from vibrant businesses. They never make any of their own. Many of these world leaders have no stake in the future because they haven't created any children of their own. What do they care if the world goes to hell in a handcart? They'll be long gone. What do Leo Varadkar, Simon Harris and Mary McAleese all have in common? Well, a lot of answers spring to mind, but for the sake of the children watching, I'll hold my tongue. But the truth is, they all claim to support the right to life of little unborn babies until it was politically expedient, and then they flipped on a dime. I mean, if Varadkar was a shoe, he'd be a flip-flop. The man has never taken a moral stance in his life. It was just announced that under the government's new abortion regime, GPs will be paid €400 per abortion. So, 450? Well, that's the price of an Irish citizen's life to these people. That's the situation we're in now. If that is what they're willing to do to the most innocent and vulnerable among us, what would they be willing to do to you or I? What would they be willing to do to our country? Is this really the best that Ireland can muster? I don't think it is. I think more highly of us than that. And thankfully, we aren't the only people in Europe who've had enough with the current system. Just last week, the proud people of Poland had their Independence Day, where 200,000 Polish citizens turned out on the streets of Warsaw to assert their love for their great culture and to celebrate their hard-won liberty from so many authoritarian regimes in history. The Nazis, the Communists, the Ottoman Empire, they beat them all and more. And they're proud of their history, and rightly so. So how did the media try to spin this positive event? Oh, look at these fascists and xenophobes and racists and blah, blah, blah. All the typical NPC outrage that we've come to expect from the media. Because apparently, according to these people, being proud of your culture means that you automatically must hate everybody else's. That's the way these people really think the world works. I mean, Kate mentioned my mother's from Jamaica. I still get accused of being a xenophobe by these people. That's the caliber of intellectual that we're dealing with. You know, these people are not deep thinkers. They'd find a piece of sandpaper and think it was a map of the Sahara. So... But let's not overlook the irony here that pro-EU journalists who support an anti-democratic socialist superstate run by Germany, which wants to attack Russia after crushing Poland and Hungary, are the same people accusing everyone else of being fascists. That is a remarkable take on the situation, if I do say so myself. If that's not an exercise in Orwellian doublethink, then I don't know what is. Being proud of your country and history is nothing to be ashamed of. It doesn't matter if you're from Poland or Ireland or anywhere else. I wouldn't ask anyone to give up their nationality or their heritage. I love Ireland and I am proud of it. I'm not a European, whatever that means. I'm an Irishman and I will be until the day I die. Historically, this beautiful island has always moved the world to achieve great and mighty things. We're the descendants of high kings and rebels, warrior women, saints and explorers. Our mothers and fathers defeated the biggest empire in history. If we ever start to doubt ourselves, all we need to do is look at what our forebears have achieved. In every field of human endeavour, Ireland has played a part in advancing the welfare of mankind. In medicine, our own Francis Rind, a Dublin doctor, invented the hypodermic syringe. In science, John Joly gave the world colour photography, the stethoscope, the induction coil, even the submarine. These were all Irish inventions. Edmund Burke's political ideas are championed all over the world, and our playwrights, poets and authors are the stuff of legend on the world stage. Humanitarians, musicians, explorers, revolutionaries, missionaries, all of these are gifts from Ireland to the world in just the last few hundred years alone. That is why I'm proud to be Irish, and it's why I'm convinced that even now our best is yet to come. We've proven time and time again that Ireland's potential is limitless when we're free from the chains of foreign control. But that potential can only be realised when you and I have the courage to stand up. They think that we're so brainwashed by cultural Marxism that we've forgotten who we are. Well, I haven't forgotten. When Europe was a wasteland ravaged by barbarians after the fall of Rome, who came to save this great continent? Who gave it back its learning and its history and brought the people of Europe back from the brink of destruction to restore our civilization? The so-called backward Irish, that's who. The saints and scholars of the Emerald Isle. People just like you and I. That's who saved Europe. And we can do it again. We Irish have been standing up to injustice like this since time immemorial. This is nothing new to us. So we here in this room may not have started the movement for Irish freedom, but you mark my words, we will damn well finish it. It angers me deeply that so many good and decent and gentle people have been pushed further and further to the edges of our society, hiding from a politically correct mob and afraid to speak the truth. I've spoken to so many people at events like this that come up to me or they send me an email and they tell me they're afraid. Some of the nicest, most reasonable, most compassionate people you could ever meet. Not a racist or hateful bone in their body. And yet they're scared to speak up, even though they're right, because they know the social consequences when you say these things in public. That is unacceptable in a civilised society, it's unacceptable in Ireland, and I won't stand for it. These globalists have seen how far we're willing to go for a quiet life, just to not be harassed and ostracised for speaking our minds. They've seen what we'll do for comfort. So I ask you now, what would you do for freedom? Will we slink away somewhere and hide and watch this once grand country grow dim before our eyes? Or are we willing to go that extra mile and do the impossible for Ireland once again? I'm telling you now, we so often underestimate ourselves. We don't know what we're capable of until we try. And here's the best part, neither do they. I'll be wrapping up now in a moment, but there's an old Irish song that I was always very fond of growing up, and the lyrics go, "At Easter 1916, when Pearse called them out, the men from the Dublin battalion rode out, and in that post office they nobly did show how a handful of heroes could outfight the foe." Well, looking out at this brave crowd that we have here today, you look like more than a handful of heroes to me. And if the latest polls are to be believed, there are over 1 million Irish heroes at our backs, not to mention the millions of supporters we have overseas. The great St. Patrick saved this entire island in a single lifetime. One man with the will to try. We have friends and supporters in every continent on earth who want us to succeed and are willing to help. We owe it to them, and we owe it to ourselves and the unborn generations of Irish men and women yet to come to claim back our freedom and theirs. So stand up, Irish heroes, and make your voices heard. Join a party that's willing to tell these globalists what we think of them. Join for the sake of your children and for your future. This isn't over until we quit, and that's exactly what they're counting on. They say that Ireland is finished and that we may as well give up and just become homogenised Europeans. Well, they will never get that. We will never give up, and we're going to keep being proud of our country and give Juncker a headache that makes his hangovers feel tame by comparison. God bless Galway, God bless Ireland, and God bless the Irish people. Éireann go bragh.